Hello and welcome. This is Patrick Giguere, and thank you for tuning into this video. So this is a video that some friends asked me to make. This topic kept coming up in conversation, so I've got some free time and I'm hoping to do this within the space of about a half hour or less. So I'm going to talk about Easter today. I'm going to talk about the origins of Easter. I don't begrudge anybody their faith at all. So that's not what this video is about. I'm not trying to piss people off, but at the same time, I'm not afraid to. And so yeah, I don't begrudge people their faith. You know, if people have a spiritual path, a religion, which can be extremely different things. But, you know, if people have either one of those or both, and, you know, if it helps them be a genuinely decent person. I don't like the word good. You know, saying that somebody's good, you know, it's kind of, it's a little manipulative, you know, to refer to everybody in terms of good guys or bad guys, because the world's a lot more complicated than that. But yeah, if your path helps you to be a decent person, then, you know, more power to you. But I'm interested in where things come from, and, you know, friends and colleagues of mine and, you know, even clients of mine are interested in the origins of things. And I think knowing the origins of things helps us to be better people, helps us to be more decent people, more well-informed people. What we usually consider intelligent or, you know, well-informed, it's usually when people echo our own assumptions and our own prejudices about the things we believe. So most people in this world are very expert at surrounding themselves only with people who tell them what they want to hear. But the world also needs assholes like me that are, you know, not going to tell people what they want to hear. And I think a big problem with the modern world is we don't know history. We don't know the origins of things. And we get manipulated, especially here in America. You know, people around the world, the thing they say about Americans is that they think that the world was born when their country began. You know, this is a common thing in America. People's worldview has an assumption that the world began in July of 1776, or it began in 1861 when the Civil War began, or it began in 1945 when America supposedly vanquished evil forever, you know, in the form of the Third Reich, which is a total fairy tale. But anyway, we're better people when we have information, but people running institutions are threatened when people are informed, because they want people to believe their take on things. They want people to adopt their worldview. So, yeah. So anyway, I want to talk about the origins of Easter. I'm getting off on tangents already. So Easter. So I grew up in America. I grew up in the USA. It's a predominantly Christian culture, and it's a predominantly, especially Anglo-Saxon, you know, Scots-Irish Protestant culture. But, you know, it's a Christian culture. And all Christians have Easter in common, no matter what brand of Christianity incorporated, you know, you choose to consume. Easter is a common factor. So, you know, the story of Easter, on the surface of it, it's the story of the resurrection of Jesus Christ after, having died on Good Friday after being crucified in Jerusalem. The hill he was crucified on, I could make a whole video of that, Golgotha, the place of the skull, but that's another tangent. So anyway, there's a story about how this guy Jesus, he's crucified on Friday, dies in the same afternoon, and lays in a tomb on Saturday, and is resurrected on a Sunday. So that's the long and short of it. That's the condensed version. So so when it comes to Easter in this, Western society, we're like, oh, that's the day Jesus pulled off his resurrection. But this is a much older holiday, and that is the main purpose of this video. I want to talk about the origins of it. So we have this word Easter. So in English, in modern English, E-A-S-T-E-R, Easter. Well, there was a Germanic goddess in, continental Germany and the lands surrounding it. Even the, all the different German tribes, even the Franks, who, eventually moved into France, established, what we call France today. All these Germanic tribes on continental Europe, this goddess was known as Ostara. Now, in Anglo-Saxon England, and, the Anglos and the Saxons moved to England from the northwest coast of Germany. Their language was a little different, and this goddess's name is Eastre. So in the Latin alphabet, this is E-A-S-T-R-E. So you just switch, you transpose the E and the R, you change the positions. So this holiday, Easter, comes from Eastre, or another word to say this, Ostara. So this goddess, her name means daybreak, or it means dawn. And for this goddess to have a feast day at this time of the year is extremely appropriate, because we need to consider how do all the churches calculate Easter Sunday, except for, the Eastern Orthodox, but they're just using a different calendar, but they have the same calculation method. So how do they do this? So all Christian churches determine Easter by first finding the day of the vernal equinox. The vernal equinox is the spring equinox. It falls generally around March the 20th, 21st, maybe 22nd. The equinox is when we here in the Northern Hemisphere have equal night and day. So it's when the sun moves to a position on the horizon where it rises due west, it rises directly west. This is the day when the sun is passing over the equator. And actually, this is where the Jewish religion gets Passover. It's the day the sun passes over the equator. So it's not just Christianity that has this. But, so getting back to the point, how do we calculate the day for Easter? You find the spring equinox. So the spring equinox, again, falls around. The vernal equinox falls around March the 22nd. Then you find the next full moon after the equinox. So for example, this year, equinox on March the 21st. Then on March the 25th, we had a full moon, and it happened to be a lunar eclipse this year that was on the 25th. So then the Sunday after that full moon, which falls after the Passover, after the equinox, which is the sun passing over the equator, you have, I just lost my train of thought. So you have spring equinox, the next full moon, and then the following Sunday. So you find the full moon that comes after the equinox, find the first Sunday after that full moon. So this year, again, March 21st, Spring Equinox, March the 25th, first full moon. And then this year, March the 31st, Sunday, March the 31st, you get Easter. So this is clearly an astronomically and astrologically derived holiday. There's no bones about it. You know, and this is, when you get into religions that are all based on like revealed word, you're going to bump into contradictions. It's just how it goes. So it's a funny thing. People often argue that Easter is a bigger holiday than Christmas. But Easter is determined by the cycles of the sun and moon. This really shoots a hole in the boat of the argument that has been made by the churches, all of the churches, since probably the last 1800 years, that like astrology is somehow evil. Well, all of the holidays are determined by cycles of the sun and moon. So you can't have it both ways. You know, and I think this is why, you know, the Puritans in England in the 1600s and the Puritans in North America for a period, they abolished all holidays. They abolished Christmas especially. Under the argument it was a pagan holiday, but really, when you look at when these holidays fall, every holiday is a pagan holiday. There's just nothing you can do about that because that's the older tradition. Now, I'm trying to think, you know, if you asked these days, if you asked maybe 10 Christians, you know, if you just said, hey, what do you think about paganism? I'd say maybe at this point, you know, maybe 5 of them, you know, maybe 6 might tell you that paganism's evil because they heard that at one point from, you know, parents or a church pastor or whatnot. Well, again, that's a prejudice. That's an assumption that people have been passing around. Paganism is not, pagans have never done anything more evil than Christians, Muslims, or Jews have. I think when the pagans did it, they were honest about it. You know, all of the Christianity, Judaism, Islam, they sacrifice humans all the time, but they call it crusades, holy wars, jihads, just wars. You know, so paganism is not what people usually think it is. Paganism is, it's really about using the natural world in order to gain an insight into the spiritual dimension of life. So, and it's basically a view that humanity is the connection between the divine in the unseen world and then, you know, nature, which was divinely created. So humans are almost like a fuse in a fuse box that connect the two. So that's really, you know, what paganism's all about. And it's about internal harmony. It's about self-love, and it's about just being in harmony with the natural cycles and with one's own inner nature, you know, and not resenting ourselves or feeling guilty for just being who we are. So, yeah. So the whole point with the whole tangent about paganism, that's how you find all of the religious holidays in every religion, even the revealed ones, you know, who say their scriptures are the only, you know, true word of God. People want to have that perspective, fine, but it's a funny thing how every group in the world, you know, pretty much happens to be the correct one that knows the correct truth. You know, it's a funny thing. You know, to me, I think everybody's gods are real. So, anyway, so you've got this, so this Easter holiday falls the Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox or the vernal equinox. So that's how we calculate it. So it's calculated from the northern hemisphere. So the spring equinox, this is a time when light defeats darkness, because at the equinox, day and night are equal. And then on, you know, 322, March 22nd, which is, you know, why Skull and Bones uses this this number 322. It's the day when the light overtakes the darkness for the next 6 months until the autumnal equinox in September. So day is longer than night. So light defeats darkness. So that's a big reason that this holiday is celebrated. And, again, that's why the Jews have the Passover, because when you reach the spring, the light defeats the darkness, and, the angel of death has passed over. So, winter was a scary time in the old days, and, you could run out of food, you could get sick more easily, the weather could get extreme. So people said during the winter, the angel of death is out and about and is, flying over and looking for someone to take. So you get through winter, the angel of death is not such a threat after the sun has passed over. So yeah, this stuff is just, it's so ancient, it's mind-boggling. But yeah, that's this is where Easter comes from. Now, when you look at this goddess, Eastre or Ostara, she had a whole bunch of customs around her, a bunch of symbolism. One of her symbols was the rabbit. So rabbits are very prolific breeders. They have big litters. They have a 30-day, a 1-month gestation period. So, the rabbit gets pregnant, a month later, she gives birth to a litter of rabbits. So they're very prolific breeders. They're very fertile. Easter eggs, coloring Easter eggs, painting Easter eggs, bright colors. This goes back to pre-Christian Europe, to pagan Europe. And there was actually a myth where Ostara, or Eastre, whatever you want to call her, there was a year when she came too late. So she's, on top of her name being dawn or daybreak, she's the goddess of the spring. So she brings in the spring, which the summer follows. And so in the myth, there was a year when she arrived too late, and the buds on the trees didn't get going soon enough. The agricultural year was sort of stunted. Everything came late. And when she arrived, there was a baby bird, dying on the forest floor because it was suffering from the long winter, and its wings were frozen, and it was on the verge of death. So Eastre or Ostara, she took this baby bird and she turned it into a rabbit so that it could live. But this rabbit, because it had origins as a bird, would lay eggs. Would lay these brightly colored eggs. So this is where we get, and in pagan Europe, they used to have Easter egg hunts for little children. So this is an extremely old holiday. Another thing too, in places like England, Scotland, Ireland, even Scandinavia, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, those kind of places, they make hot cross buns. So that goes way back. That goes back before Christianity. Now, a funny thing about the symbol of the cross, this was also a pre-Christian symbol. And there was a lot of controversy around the symbol of the cross in the early days of Christianity. So, in the early days of Christianity, you had different symbols for Jesus and for the religion itself. So in the early days, Jesus was symbolized by a fish, which was called nun, so N-U-N in the Latin alphabet. Then he was a lamb. Then he was a child on his mother's lap, so kind of like the Madonnas, in medieval and Renaissance art. And then he was a beardless youth. He kind of looked like Apollo, like the sun god, or the god of light, Apollo, who could, who was also known to walk on water. And then after that, about around the year 1000, or about the year 900 or 1000, Jesus became a bearded, mature man hanging on a cross. Now, in the early days of Christianity, the cross was considered a pagan symbol, and it was far too pagan to be used by the Christians. The cross is, originally it was equilateral. It had equal arms, it had 4 equal arms. So then with this cross, this equilateral cross, which is called the heathen's cross or the pagan's cross, this is a diagram of the year. So this heathen's cross, this pagan's cross, this equilateral cross, what it is, it's a diagram of the sun's path through the year. So for the vertical arm of the cross, the top point is Litha. In old Europe, this holiday was called Litha. This is Midsummer's Day. This is the summer solstice, which these days they call the first day of summer, but to me the longest, and to the ancients, the longest day of the year is not the beginning of summer, it's midsummer, because the next day starts the decline of the sun. The bottom point is Yule, the winter solstice. The point on the right side, on the horizontal arm, this is Mabon, this is the autumnal equinox. And then on the left, you have Eastre or Ostara, the feast of Ostara or Eastre. So the cross is an extremely old pagan symbol that the Christians wouldn't touch. But as Christianity incorporated, expanded over the centuries, to get more people to subscribe, to join the brand, they had to incorporate other gods and goddesses and feast days from other religions, from other spiritual traditions. So this is why the symbols for Jesus went through this transformation from a fish to a lamb to a little boy to a youth, and eventually to a grown man with a beard hanging on the cross, which is a subject for a whole other video. But Jesus became a grown, bearded man hanging on the cross when the Christian Empire wanted to conquer Germany and the other Germanic lands like England and Scandinavia. So they basically had to adopt the symbols of the god Odin as the symbols of Jesus. So the cross went from being a taboo to the symbol of the religion. So, it's long and drawn out and convoluted, but that's the broad strokes of it. But, church fathers like St. Augustine, the Augustine of the Bishop of Hippo in North Africa, he expounded at great length about how the cross was a pagan symbol and it shouldn't be used. And in the old days, the crucifixion was actually, it was a footnote in the whole story of Jesus. Wait one sec. Got a timer about to go off here. All right. Baking some muffins. So anyway, the early church fathers did not like the cross. And the crucifixion was really this small part of the story. The resurrection was definitely a major point, but it wasn't as big as it is in modern Christianity. Really, the main thing about Jesus in the early days was that he was basically a racially pure Superman from the tribe of David. He had pure royal blood from this one royal family. So the whole thing's changed over the years. But Eastre, the goddess Eastre, she and her feast day, they were too big to stamp out. And Christianity was very heavy-handed in the old days. These days, Christian churches are nice because they have to be. Because from the Renaissance through the middle of the 1700s, Christianity was gradually civilized by the Roman and Greek philosophy that was made available during the Renaissance, when books were being printed and when learning was having a rebirth. It had been sleeping since, the Roman Empire. That's why they call it the Dark Ages, after the Roman Empire fell. Ignorance reigned, and the people who were ruling Europe benefited greatly from mass ignorance. So, yeah, churches are nice today because, ironically, Greek and Roman philosophy from the pagan era that said, well, you can't kill people just because they don't believe in your religion. That finally stuck, and the churches were like, shit, we have to be nice now. So, before that, before the Renaissance, Christianity was like extreme Islam today, where you could be killed for disagreeing and for being an unbeliever. So, and even still, especially here, here in the United States, it's like Catholic immigrants, were lynched well into the 1900s by, Protestant mobs, who were made up of, bigoted people. So, yeah, that's a new development. So, things change over time. But in the old days, Christian missionaries went into Europe and they said, I'm a representative of the one true God, and if you don't convert, there's an army waiting. If you don't convert in a timely fashion, this army's going to come through. They're going to take everything away from you. They're probably going to kill you. So what's it going to be? That's how the religion originally spread. It was just like Islam. It wasn't, we talk about the good news today, but the good news in the old days was, we're not going to kill you if you convert. So, this makes a lot of people uncomfortable, but see, that's the thing about the truth. What usually passes for the truth in this world, it's when you tell people what they want to hear. It's when you affirm and you confirm people's assumptions and people's prejudices. But if something is really the truth, it's probably not going to, make you feel good, make you feel like you know everything. So we have to deal with things that are emotionally uncomfortable. And that's our responsibility as adults. In order to guide and to steward children, we have to teach them how to deal with their own uncomfortable emotions. And that's kind of a rare thing today that, pretty much anyone can do that. Here in America, we've been living in a Disneyland since the end of World War II, which I don't think it has long to go. So, yeah. If you're hearing the truth, it shouldn't make you feel like you know everything and like your parents knew everything. It should, it should piss you off a little bit and it should make you a little uncomfortable, but it's going to push you to expand your mind. And I love that phrase, a mind's like a parachute. It works best when it's open. So in Western society today, everybody will tell you they're open-minded, but they get awfully pissed off and they'll start attacking you and your character personally when you tell them something they don't want to hear. So I'm kind of that guy, I guess. I'm a bit of a balloon popper, a bubble popper. But yeah, so like I said in the beginning, I don't begrudge anyone their faith, but we need to know the origin of things, especially if we celebrate ourselves for being intelligent and well-informed. We should know these things. So, this is in Europe. Europeans often say America is not a different country, it's a different planet. And, it's because we just don't know the origins of things. We live in a 200-year-old world here in America. And people other places in the world, they're not historical scholars, but they know much more history. The average person in Europe or Asia or Latin America, Africa, they know much more history than the average American, much, much more. It's like they could pass the test for naturalization to become a U.S. citizen much more easily than, someone who was born in the U.S. could. So anyway, it's good that we know these things. So that's about it, and I'm at 34 minutes? Not too bad. Talk to you later. Happy Eastre. Happy Ostara.